My name's Scott Redmond. I'm an alcoholic. Everybody, can you hear me? I was sitting there, I'm thinking, oh man, my sponsor's here. I don't want to talk. I didn't know anything about Alcoholics Anonymous until I got here on April 22nd, 1985. And if you had shown me a picture of this, like in about 1969, if you just said, this is where you're going to wind up, all right? Lavender, lime green, destiny, happy, old guys. I would have even thought, am I in a play at a mental institution? Have I just got fucking so much acid, this is where I'm going to wind up? I mean, I don't even, with two pictures like I found in the garbage of strange rows of like, I wouldn't have even, I couldn't have even computed. If you knew I like to wrap him in a AA, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you asking me and my wife to come this weekend, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate all the great and wonderful hard work and how great the place looks. I just wouldn't have known what to make of it, pretty much. And we're going to hear some of my favorite people in Alcoholics Anonymous and in Al-Anon this weekend, including my wife, who's going to talk tomorrow. I want to share with you one of the great Al-Anon slogans that my wife has shared with me in the past. In our area, one of the things that's discussed in Al-Anon, particularly, I guess, with Nancy and her sponsor, that if we're embroiled in a disagreement at times, my wife would be encouraged to say, you could be right. You could be right. And we'll go on with the business of life. And one day we were in the car and we were having a particularly odious disagreement about something, and my wife said, you could be right, but not today. Not today, big guy. It might happen sometime in the future, but it ain't today. And my sponsor and his wife are going to talk tomorrow, and Debbie, who I just adore, gives one of the best talks in AAs, and I talk on Sunday. And if you're new, I'm sure this just throws the living crap at you. I'm sure. But I'm really excited, and our son goes to school in Olympia, so we haven't seen him since December, and we just got to see him. And boy, our youngest son who still lives with us, it was his birthday a couple of weeks ago, and we're all out for dinner. And just when we started dinner, and I looked at our son Jesse, who was turning 18, and I said, you know, despite the terrible circumstances of your birth and the awful place that we were when you were born, I was just looking at him, I said to him, I cannot believe where we have wound up as a family. And he so appreciated it. Our sons so appreciate the truth. And I couldn't have said that to him nor discussed it if we weren't in the place that we were in. And he said, tell me, what was it like? What was going on? And we got to talk about it in an open and honest way. Jesse just got his SATs back. He got 1540. I have no interest in bragging about him at all. If you don't understand what that means, please see me. I have some literature on it after the meeting. Some months ago, he said to me, Dad, can you help me with my homework? I said, yeah, what do you want me to do? He said, get me something to eat. I'm having no idea, absolutely not even the foggiest notion of what he's involved in school. And I do know that he lives in a home that's not a war zone, in a home where a kid could study, could get some work done. I don't think that he got 1540 on his SATs because I'm sober. A lot of kids have faced a lot more difficult stuff than that and still achieved. I know that I'm sober and I'm able to enjoy it, and I'm getting to brag about it a lot. I want to thank Jennifer and Alan for picking us up at the airport. I controlled myself. I waited an hour before I even mentioned the SAT scores, which is a personal best for me so far. Didn't take me longer than 90 seconds up here tonight. And if you knew, I'm sure you're thrilled for my son. Can I see the hands of people in their first year? Wow, welcome to AA. When I was new in Alcoholics Anonymous, I let those people get right up in my face and talk that endless, unsolicited AA crap to me. And the kind of guy I am, the kind of boo I am, is I'm a nice guy. I'm a sterling human being. That's the way I've tried to get to people to do what I want them to do my whole life. So I'd stand there and listen to these guys with one tooth with a cavity in it, tell me how great my life was going to be. Do I want what you've got? No. No. But thanks for spitting on me. I really appreciate it. When I listen to this endless crap and just good and nod and play that their face would burst into flame, just go up in a column of smoke. I mean, I'm here. I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous. Beyond any plateau of lameness I ever even imagined was possible to me. I'm in AA. When do we hook a rug, About a year later, I came home. My wife had a big bell of ticking and a bolt of gingham. And I just figured, that's it. We're done. We've become an arts and crafts family. My worst nightmare. And what she was doing was her sponsor, who I just adore, have always adored, had gotten Nancy into service, and it was her job to stuff gingham swans with the ticking for the centerpieces for the Al-Anon luncheon at our local function. Now, if you've ever been to an Al-Anon function, the centerpieces at an Al-Anon function look kind of like floats at the Rose Parade. Some of them are mechanized, they have little waterfalls, and they get very busy with this stuff. And I just went, oh, man, oh, God, we're hobby shop drunks, And the fact is now, Nancy and I, one of the codes we use, if I ask if an Al-Anon newcomer is getting it, she'll say to me that she has started to stuff swans. That she's getting it, because I know what happened to my family as a result of stuffing swans. And I hated Alcoholics Anonymous when I got here. I have never hated anything as much as I hated AA. I walked into that first meeting that first day, and it was, do I bring my own bib overalls next week? Am I issued a pair? Thank you, Clem. I mean, I just, I couldn't believe it. And it was a miracle. Miracle. I'm a miracle. You're a miracle. The coffee and furniture are miracles, too. Oh, my God. So I want to welcome all you new people. Kind of like being voted most attractive man on your cell block, huh? Sorry, I'm an honor, but you don't know if you want to show up to pick up the award. And I also want to thank you for having us up, because there are so many people in this room. I have so many friends in this room, so many people I know and love and have known for a long time and have seen a lot of different places. I just came back a couple of weeks ago. I got to spend a weekend with a group of men out in Ellensburg, right? Right. Some of them are here tonight. I had an incredible weekend studying the steps with a group of guys. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate your generosity in bringing us up. I come from the Bronx in New York City. I was brought up a completely insane family. My wife never believed me about my family until she met him. And my mom threw an engagement party for us, and my aunt came and wore her wig backwards, and it had a bun on it. These are my people. This is my genetic pool. You don't lie about that. You don't go down to the bartender and brag about this kind of deranged behavior. And stupid. I mean, I had an uncle who was one of the top 10 welterweights of the world during the 1930s, and he was, I'm Jewish, which I don't know even how I got alcoholism, because Jews don't drink, because it might dull the pain. I have no self-control at all. I know when you share that in Arkansas. What the hell? Let's have that Jew hunt, honey. me strap these antlers on. Where was I? At any rate, and my uncle was concerned about anti-Semitism. He was fighting down in Atlanta, Georgia. It was 1938. His name was Izzy Redmond, and he changed his name because he was concerned about the anti-Semitism. He changed his name to Izzy Goldberg. So no one would know he was Jewish. And they were stupid. And although I judge no man, and dangerously deranged. And there was chronic institutionalization and suicide attempts. A lot of really bad stuff in my family. If you're new here, all I've got is good news for you, because my family had absolutely nothing to do with making me an alcoholic. I'm not telling you a lot of bad stuff didn't happen. It happened. And I'm not telling you I didn't have to do a lot of stuff to repair some of that stuff and take care of it. But you can't make me a drunk that way. If you could make me a drunk that way, if you really could make me an alcoholic through those family problems, those phobias, all those difficulties, because they did exist, but if those made me a drunk, then I could go to psychotherapy and work diligently and not be an alcoholic anymore. It just stands to reason. Now again, if you're new, this might sound really confusing, because you might come from a really bad place. I'm not telling you for 1 minute that you don't. I used to poo-poo something in AA. I don't poo-poo anymore. I used to hear people say, I drank because I'm straight. I drank because I'm gay. I drank because I was abused. I drank because I was sexually molested. I drank because I'm a depressive. And I used to say, no, you don't. Well, you know what? I don't believe that anymore. I believe people they tell me they drank because of that. I believe them. But this is what I also believe. You can't stay drunk for that. There was a real edge of cynicism and grandiosity in music. Oh, no, that's not why you drank. Bull. I believe that you drank. But to stay drunk, you have to have an allergy. You have to have this bizarre alchemy of the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. That's what makes alcoholism. And if you're new here and if you don't have it, stick around. We'd love to give it to you. A lot of people don't catch it and they die from it. A lot of people catch it and they get better. My sponsor's fond of saying that the infection takes place at the meetings. It enters through the ear and infects people, and then they start spreading it to other people. And that's exactly what happened to me. So I was put in psychotherapy at a very young age. I was in therapy for 18 years. By the time I got to AA, I was going to be dead, but I was going to understand it. And as a young man, I drank till I didn't want to be a drunk, but I didn't want to be an alcoholic. My father was a bartender. I heard a lot about people drinking with drinking problems, and I overcame my alcohol problem with marijuana at a pretty young age. I'm going to talk about drugs now for a minute, because it's part of my story. I don't mean to offend anybody. I believe in our triangle. I believe in unity. If it really annoys you, Dave asked me to talk. He invited me out. So, Dave, would you raise your hand? Talk to him. I didn't apply for the job. And I overcame my alcohol problem with marijuana. I'd like to welcome all the pot smokers here tonight. I'd like to welcome all. Do you remember why you're clapping? Usually they go, yeah! What? I overcame my marijuana problem with pills. I conquered my pill problem with cocaine. Cocaine is an excellent drug. It's particularly good for sex if you enjoy sex from the Neolithic period. I kicked that galldarn cocaine with heroin. Heroin's a very dark, complicated, artistic drug. And then you cross the line and become a vomiting pig. It's just a little hop, skip, and a jump. And I drank till I didn't want to be a drunk, and I drank throughout. And by the time I was in my, it's a funny thing. I have a friend named Bobby Ruiz, and he got sober on Skid Row in L.A. And he called me up one day and he said, Scott, I want you to come down. They're going to induct me into something called the Hall of Miracles down in the Salvation Army. Anybody who gets 3 years or more gets inducted into the Hall of Miracles on Skid Row. And it's an incredible thing to be there. You know what's the only sad thing about it is there weren't 100 news cameras down there. News cameras will show up for the bad stuff, but what an incredible thing to cover. 50 people with 3 years or more coming off Skid Row, coming off the Salvation Army. Talk about success stories. And I used to get annoyed sometimes when I hear kids at AA meetings. There's a point you can cross the line, and you have to ask Damien to leave now and again. But when I just hear even the sound, that sound of that kid, which is not distracting to me at all. And this Salvation Army guy, this colonel of the Salvation Army guy, got up at this function, and he said to this crowd, "Please don't let the sounds of the children," because there were kids running around ripping the place up. He said, "Don't let the sounds of the children bother you, because this should be music to our ears. It's the sounds of families that shouldn't exist." And man, anytime, it's a great thing. Anytime I start getting, approaching that edge, I just think of that line, and what a true thing. What a true thing. I just tell you, I'm supposed to tell my story, but just finish up with Bobby's story. Bobby made a deal with God when he was in rehab that he'd run a marathon for him. And when he went down to sign up to run the LA Marathon, he told them their story. They wanted to know why he was running there, and they printed it in the paper. And the guys on Skid Row read it, and they put together a cheering section for him when he ran through Skid Row. Just an incredible guy. Incredible AA success story. He's got 14 years now. A great guy. Yeah. And I was in my early 20s. I had slammed some heroin. My father had a massive stroke. I was taken to the hospital, and I couldn't be there for him or my mom. And my father was lost to me. I felt so ashamed and horrified with my behavior. I had collapsed as a son, a man, and I knew what the problem was. The problem was heroin and needles, and I swore I would never put one in my arm again. And I didn't, not for 13 years. Shortly after that, I was acting in the Broadway play, and a new usherette with long brown hair walked in. I took one look at her. I didn't even say hello to her. I walked back into the dressing room, got up on a chair, and announced to the male members of this cast that if anyone talked to the new usherette with long brown hair, I'd break all the bones in their hands and feet. So anytime a guy would walk near Nancy, he'd kind of go, "Ooh," and dash away. And I fell in love with my wife of 23 years at first sight. I fell in love with her at first sight. I've loved her ever since I met her, and I love her more now. And that's only because of you guys. Because I used to sit up and look at her jugular vein pumping and think, can't we stop that? It's just such a little thing. What if I risk my finger on it? Would that kill her? I thought she was the source of not only what was wrong in my life, but probably yours too if you thought about it. And we started this incredible life together. We were young, we were in our early 20s. I was acting on Broadway where, we're living in what's arguably one of the most exciting places in the universe to live. The world was at our feet. And we had alcoholism, man. We were going nowhere but down. We went down and just spread out, and then went down and it spread out more, and it happened slowly over a period of time, and we had a lot of good times. Our son Micah was born, and a couple of years after we got married, and he was really welcomed into this world. There were lots of friends around, and flowers, and phone calls, where, that we were right in our community of people. And 2 years and 9 months later, when Jesse was born, there were no flowers, no phone calls, there was nobody around. We had been completely isolated by the disease of alcoholism in just 2 years and 9 months. And it wasn't because people didn't love us. It really just hurt too much to be around us. And I really understand what that's like today. We pressed ourselves on our family like a thumb on a bruise. It just was too hard. And Jesse got sick. He had to go to neonatal intensive care, and a doctor called me that night from the hospital and said, "Mr. Redman, your wife's all alone down here. She's in tremendous duress, and we need you." And I said, I can't come down. I can't find anybody to watch my 2-year-old son." And this doctor, whom I had never met before, a complete stranger and a doctor to boot, said to me, "I'll tell you what, my husband's home. I'll give you our phone number. You can go to our house, bring your kid over there, and my husband will watch your son so you can come down here." What a remarkably generous gesture from somebody I'd never met before. And I said no. I had no way that I could accept her generosity. I think if I had said yes, then I would have had to probably take a look at where we had wound up. How did this happen? How do you want... This is when you're supposed to be right in the middle of it, right in the middle of love. This is when you're supposed to be right in the middle of your community and get... You know what I'm talking about. You know that... There's no better place in the world to be in a hospital than a maternity ward. It doesn't get any better than that when everything's okay. And when everything's not, there's no worse place to be in the world. And when you got no God, you're all alone and completely isolated, and the ice around your heart has gotten so thick it's repelled everybody around you. There's really no worse place to be. And that's where we wound up. One of my wife's favorite lines in the big book, one of the moments she and I have shared a lot about, is when Bill talks about having a life that you can't, it's so bad, he can't sleep upstairs because he might kill himself. He's dragged his bedding down to the ground floor. He's stealing from his wife every day when she comes home. He's unwanted by his friends. He cannot stop drinking. He paints a picture so bleak, you can't imagine that anyone could even live there. And then he says, little were we to know this was to continue. I don't know if he says 2 or 3 more years. And that's exactly what happened to us. From that bottom, that day, in that hospital, we were to continue that way for 3 more years, until Jesse was a little over 3 years old. And on April 20th, 1985, I crossed the line that I swore I would never cross again. And this was shortly after my older son, Micah, had come to me. He was about 5 at the time, and he said, Dad, is there anything such as God? And I looked into the eyes of my perfect 5-year-old baby boy, and I said, no, there isn't. I lied to him. I think worse than lying to him, what I said in essence to him was, you know, honey, when it's dark and it's late at night, you're all alone and you're scared and you can't go to sleep, tough, because that's all there is. That's really what I said to him. I don't think there's really a worse piece of information that you can give a kid. And it's completely diametrically opposed to what I thought I was doing. What I thought I was doing was saving him some time and some trouble, so he wouldn't have to be played like a sap or a sucker, so he could get the real existential deal. And what I was doing was, and our book points it out so gorgeously in the 4th chapter, I was giving him the weakest, mushiest, most baseless, hard to defend position of all. And on April 20th, 1985, I crossed the line I swore I would never cross again. I put a needle in my arm. And you see, the night my dad died, I knew what the problem was. I knew why I had wound up in that place. It was because of heroin and because of needles. And as long as I didn't use needles, I was fine. But on April 20th, 1985, 13 years later, I crossed the line I swore I would never cross again, and my world came crashing down around me. Now, why did I go to an AA meeting? I called my therapist. I told him what I had done. He said, the only thing I can suggest is we either institutionalize you or send you to AA. Why did I go to AA? I have no idea. On most other days, I would have gone to the institution. There's no way I would have gone to Alcoholics Anonymous. Absolutely. I love reasons to drink. I collect them. I have a friend named Larry. The first time he ever read our book, he read the first page of the 4th chapter, which contains a sentence which basically says, facing a spiritual life or an alcoholic death is not always an easy decision to make. And in it, it's tough. Die in a pool of my own urine, spiritual life. Very, really tough decision to make. And the first time he had ever read that sentence, he said to himself, well, how bad an alcoholic death are we talking about here? My favorite reason to drink I've ever heard happened a couple of years ago. I was sponsoring this guy for about 15 minutes. And he lived with his wife, was a male prostitute, and he had a gay lover, and he called me to tell me that he drank. And I said, oh, why? And he said, I caught my wife cheating on me. You can't make that up. You can't write that. And I understand that. I completely understand that. Because that's either the product of just a gem. He had to come up with something, bam. It was just an occasional Hunter inspiration. Boom, boom. It came out, it was fully cut cloth. It was just a little pearl. Or that was the product of weeks in the rat's maze. Weeks on the hamster wheel. Weeks of cutting and pasting reality. Of turning the whole world so I can drink. All right, okay, I know I'm living with my wife. I know I'm a hooker with a beeper. I know I've got a gay lover, but she cheated on me. I'm out of here. You've got to turn the whole universe. And I understand it completely because I did it over and over and over again. If you're my kid, if you're my wife, if you're my dream, if you're what I want to do in my life, and you get in between me and the drink, you're either going to disappear or you're going to become invisible or you're going to become something less than human. Because I'm going to either walk through you or I'm going to walk around you, but I'll get there. And if you're my child, how much vanishing can you bear until you believe what you're being taught, which is that you don't exist? And by the time I got to AA, on April 22nd, 1985, our children were a wreck. They were a wreck. They were cut off from the society of other children. They had serious learning problems, serious problems with small motor skills, all sorts of really terrible manifestations of being scared all the time. And my wife had become very ill from prolonged exposure to me, and she had the nerve on my last overdose to call the police and embarrass me with paramedics and life-saving techniques. And why I went to that AA meeting, I don't know, but I did. I went to that Alcoholics Anonymous meeting instead of the mental institution, and I hated everything about Alcoholics Anonymous. I just couldn't believe that that's where I had wound up. And the only reason that I can imagine that I stayed is that I was out of plans. If you're new here, I pray for you that you're out of plans. If you're new here and you have a plan, it's probably a beaut. Don't use your plan. Grab one of us after the meeting and tell us your plan. We want to know the plan. And I started the boring trail of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're bored and you're hearing that, I'd like to tell you my favorite story about being bored in AA. It happened to an old friend of mine named Jeff D., who used to go to my home group. And he was a couple of weeks sober, and he was shifting around in his seat. He was at a meeting with his sponsor, and the sponsor said, "What's the matter?" And Jeff said, "I'm bored." And the sponsor said, "Well, you know why you're bored, don't you?" And Jeff said, "No." And the sponsor said, "You're bored because you're boring. That's why you're bored." And Jeff, it was like an acid moment for me. He went, wow. It just freaked him out. He thought, what a cool thing to say to a newcomer, you know? Well, he could hardly wait till a newcomer told him that they were bored. 13 years later, it hasn't happened. And Jeff was at the North Hollywood group, at our old home group, and he was with this young lady who was new, and she was shifting around in her seat. And he said, "What's the matter?" She said, "I'm bored." He said, "Well, you know why you're bored?" She said, "Yeah, because I'm with you." So if you're bored, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. I stuck around AA for 6 months and got the gift of step none. You know the gift of step none? Nothing. I had done nothing and was receiving nothing. And I thought I'd taken the first 3 steps. Now it says in our book the 3rd step will have a little permanent or lasting effect unless it once followed by a 4th step. So I guess I could take the 3rd step, but unless I've done the rest of the work, which I hadn't, it's going to kind of come and go. So I guess I had taken the first 2 steps, which is I admitted I was powerless over alcohol. I was an alcoholic, which is a fatal illness. My life was unmanageable. My life was a mess. And that I come to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Not would, not should, but that it was possible. You don't, of course, need to get restored to sanity unless you're nuts. So I had admitted my life sucked, I was dying, and I was out of my mind. Gee, how come I didn't feel any better? After a period of time, why should I feel better? Really, because I haven't done a few simple things. I had seen the AA drill hundreds of times in just the 6 months I was in. I saw people come in, do the work and change. People come in, didn't do the work, didn't change, got sick, got sicker, got to the podium, shared their gift with us, and shared their ass right out of the door, or stayed here and became columns of human sewage and sexual predators, although I judge no man. Because I'm just too spiritually developed. So I knew I was going to drink, and I asked the guy to sponsor me, and he was a good guy. and he invited me to his apartment. He had made sure I'd done some reading from the Big Book of AA, and he invited me over, and he took me through the first 2 steps. We got to step 3. We said a prayer together, and he went back and gave me instructions on how to do a 4th step from the Big Book of AA, and I stopped feeling like I was stealing someone's chair here. I know that for sure. I didn't have a burning bush experience, but I've been doing the step studies, and I didn't have much to talk about. I was not working any steps. Anytime I'm in a step study and I hear anybody's sharing begin with the following sentence, well, I haven't actually done this step, but I always think, but what the hell will you be talking about? I mean, if you haven't done the thing you're about to talk about, why are we hearing from you right now? But again, I judge no man. My sponsor gave me 3 mantras to do early on in sobriety. When someone's sharing and your DNA is unraveling, the kind of, you see people throwing lead silver beams to kill themselves, that kind of thing. And he gave me 3 things to say to myself, and I have used them to this day. They have been so helpful, and you might have to use them for the rest of my talk. One is, remember, we're going to stop. Hey, isn't that great? Because when I'm in the middle of it, I don't think it's ever going to end. So remember, they got to stop. Some new guy's going to hit him or something, and they're going to stop. Second, everything in an AA meeting needs to be said. You just might not need to hear it, but everything said needs to be said by somebody who is going to glean something from this. Why does everything that's said have to be for you? And the third thing, and this really annoyed me, you said, are you willing to take the following chance with your life? At any meeting that you've ever heard anybody talk, would you be willing to take this chance with your life? Would you be willing to get up to the podium, tap that person on the shoulder and say, why don't you shut up and sit the hell down because I'm going to talk now? And you know what? So far the answer is no. Not that I wouldn't want to a couple of times, but am I willing to take that chance with my life? Not so far. And I did my 4th step. I went back to my sponsor at 9 months of sobriety and read my 5th step. I did step 6 and 7 for the first time, which have kind of become my working template for my relationship with God. And then it came time to do my 8th step list. I try to share this anytime I talk because it's simply the best reading to this date I have ever heard of step 8. It happened at my old home group, and I heard it from a guy who I had never seen before this night and never seen him since. His name was Nino. He had a heavy New York accent, and he had never read chapter 5 before. He had never seen it. And he got up in front of this group for the first time. He had hospital plastic on. He was there with the hospital group, and he was reading chapter 5, and he got up to the 8th step, and he read, made a list of all those we had hand and became willing to make amends to them all. Jesus Christ! And he looked out into the room as if to say, have you seen this? Do you know what's in here? It was a look of such horror, of such revulsion. You know, it says in our book, that people are, men and women are approached by something we thought they had neatly evaded, this issue of spirituality. He thought he had neatly evaded some of these things, and I did too. And I share that because if you're new, it's the only thing I saw on the list of steps. When I saw the list of steps, it's the only thing I saw. Not those people, not that money. I would not have taken that much money if I knew I had to give it back. Please, I'm not a moron. If you're new, don't worry. It's 8 steps from where you are, for God's sake. And it's not 8 that's the annoying one. It's 9. Which is 9 steps from where you are. Even better news. I had to put my wife and my kids and my pop then on the list, my mother and my grandmother who went to an old age home and who I never went to visit. So every time I'd see a senior citizen, I'd get that horrible hit in the side of the face with a brick feeling. And anytime I couldn't talk about my dad, I couldn't look at pictures of him, I couldn't talk about him or think about him, because every time I did that, just that rush of personal revulsion and horror would come up. I feel like I just got slapped. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know. What was I going to do with Nancy? Let's see. I'll sit you down, honey, and I'll say, geez, hon, sorry about this 8-year journey to Hades, okay? And what was I going to do to the boys? Say, boys, I'm sorry you've had no life. I'm really so sorry. I couldn't even get the words I'm sorry out of my mouth. And the guys when I was hanging out with them, they didn't suggest that I do that. They suggested that I start doing my job. Do your job at Alcoholics Anonymous and see what happens. I had to start doing a lot of lame crap. I had to start showing up at Little League games, coaching flag football, going in and running a reading group at my kids' secondary class, being a class dad. I had to start doing lame crap. And first time I went to a ball game, I go to the ball game, the Little League game. My wife goes over and sees. She comes out of the field and just starts laughing because there's all the people in the first base stands, and there's me alone in the sun, pissed off. Just psychotic. I'm here, I'm doing my job, I'm here. Going up and down 2 hat sizes, just completely off my nut. The kids are thrilled to see me. Mr. Redmond's going to blow up, man. Look at him. I'm telling you, he's going to explode. The vein on his forehead's pumping like a garden hose. And it took a while for the voices to diminish in volume and number for me to just go and sit with the people in the stands, to just be in the first base stands, to just be at my sobriety station. And I've been doing it a couple of years, and my son Jesse received to be what I consider to be the only thing better, it might be 1540 on your SATs. He was intentionally walked. It doesn't get any better than that. I really don't think. If you're not a baseball fan, that means they're scared of you and they want to get to the weenie behind you. And he didn't want to jump up and down yelling, you don't want to be lame, so just laid the bat down. He ran up the first base line, and on the way up the first base line, he turned to me at my sobriety station, and he just shot me. Just a little bit of stuff. It's the old man. You don't want to spoil him. Don't be lame. Just a little bit of stuff. And I could have missed the whole thing. I could have missed it, and I'm not telling you my son got intentionally walked because I'm sober. I'm telling you I was at my sobriety station because I'm sober. And I went back and bragged about that for a while. And I've been with enough guys who have been drunk one more day on their kid's birthday, who I've told about the day that my kid got intentionally walked, and I know about it because I was there. Our kids have received pretty much 13 appropriate birthday gifts on the day of their birthday. Not once have they gotten the day after radioactive guilt gift. Usually the only place that would still take a hot check for me, like I'd bring home some drywall for him or something. And a box of nails, son. And paper goods. I got the paper goods in the car. And we started making a family recovery. I love to share this because it was just true. My wife and I had to stop working on our marriage. We had to stop working on our relationship. My idea of working on a relationship is to talk to you until you change your mind. That's the Scott Redmond Couples Workshop. You just got it there in 11 seconds. To talk to you until your eyes roll back in your head. You keel over, and on the way down you go, oh, okay. Anything to stop him, stop the drone, just stop the deal. Oh, that baby is so adorable. And we had to work on ourselves and try to bring a better person to the deal, and that's what we did for our first years in sobriety. And then after some time, we really lost track of each other. We had released each other so thoroughly and with so much love, we didn't know where the hell each other were. And around the time that I started working with my present sponsor, we really had... I was just driving home one day. I was driving home. I had the dream I'd always dreamed of. I was driving a brand new car. I had the respect and love of my fellows, and I realized I was scared of my wife. That when my wife would come home and I'd hear a car come up the driveway, I'd make sure the kids were watching the right TV show, the house was clean. Not that I would take care of this stuff. I just try to see what kind of, where we were. And I realized... And I had to go to my wife and say, honey, I'm scared of you. And it wasn't her fault. She wasn't trying to make me scared of her. She wasn't coming home. with a white glove and checking stuff out. I was still dealing with so much guilt, with so much shame, and poor communication with my wife, and an inability to fight well because I didn't know how to fight. And my wife taught me how to fight by helping our children learn how to fight. I felt so guilty about the boys that had such few tools, they'd start to fight, I'd pull them apart. And Nancy would say, let them finish. You never let them finish. So they keep revisiting this thing over and over again. They don't know how to be done. And I felt so guilty. It was so terrifying for me to see my kids in what I thought was pain, and all it was anxiety and an attempt to settle the anxiety, that I'd sit on my hands and I'd let them finish. So we would start to finish. I would use my two favorite tools. One is yelling and looming. I'm good. I can shut it down with a good yell, and I'm a good loomer. Big guy, just get him in your shadow, and loom. You might just fall right on and fall down. I don't know, but it's a threat. And another thing I would do is cry and use the helplessness, the tyranny of helplessness. Now, not all of my crying was about it, but some of it was. And I didn't know how to fight with him. What we would engage and start getting into this stuff, and I would yell, and Nancy would take a deep breath and say, okay, let's try this again. And I didn't walk away, and I really feel like I allowed myself to get taught that. And I'm really grateful for it. I think most of the time I fight good now. We stopped, at every fight, we stopped getting out the history books and opening all the cupboards. And it's something my sponsors we've talked about quite a bit, about fighting in the moment, in today, making it absolutely current. It's really helpful, because then you actually only have to have the fight you're actually having. And if you're new here, you're going to hear some bizarre things about alcoholism now that you're in AA. Some of the things work for me and some of them don't. I have never found any of the stuff that I found helpful to be in this book. If you do, as a matter of fact, I'd like to share with you what used to be my favorite sentence in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it could be yours too if you want it to be tonight. If I could find one of my aides. If you're new here, this part of the book, they're assuming that you've written a list of resentments. So you've written about, what people have done to you and how they've, kind of taken advantage of you and how you've been done wrong and stuff. And they're assuming you've written a list and you're looking at it. This is on bottom of 65, top of 66. It's beautiful. It says, if you're looking at this list, the thing apparent was that this world and its people were often quite wrong. That's enough for tonight. Don't read the next 2 pages. Don't. It's all bad news. Bad news. And I'll tell you why. Our book and our program does something over and over again, which is one of the most loving messages that I think I know of in AA. We're told not to argue. In the description of step 2 in the 12 and 12, it says, clergy people might come into AA. Don't argue with them about God. Say to them, you know God. You've been living in God's house. You can quote the Bible chapter and verse. I'm not saying I know God better than you, but you are yellow in color. And we apparently know something you don't know. How to not drink. But it says, don't fight with them. So here it says, don't fight with them. You are right. The world and its people are often quite wrong. Here's the problem. You're right, and you're dead. You're right and you're dead. Because you don't experience resentment as dislike. You don't experience it as discomfort. You experience it actually as a spiritual sickness that will eat your heart and your brain, turn your life black, and kill you. When your head hits the pillow, it becomes a rotisserie. Your mind-reading skills blossom and take flight. And your brain, you look like an outtake from Scanners. Your head blows up. So it doesn't say argue with them. It doesn't say prove to them that they're wrong. It just says you're right and you're dead. And that's what was happening to me even in the confines of my relationship in sobriety, because of my fear, because of my sexual problems, my sexual inhibitions, because of my resentments, because of the stuff that I couldn't let go of against my wife and myself. And I had to really get down to it and really start trying to have an intimacy and a love affair in my marriage. We had to start praying together. I had to start kind of putting my money where my mouth was and not just praying, but following the prayer through with positive actions. It was hard. It was embarrassing. It was embarrassing for me to start praying with another person. It was really difficult. I had people around me who were a great example and a great inspiration to me on that score. And Nancy and I didn't do 1, 2, 3, 7, and 11 together. We started holding hands and saying, God, please help us to not take everything so personally. Please help us to have a sense of humor. Please help us to remember that we're lovers. We're not adversaries. We're partners. We really do want the same thing. And I experienced a huge change. I experienced a huge change in my life. I really felt that I had stopped being in a war. I mean, I'm not a mind reader. I'm barely a mind user, for God's sake. I mean, we need no psychic hotline, alcoholics. All right? We just don't, you know. By the way, my other favorite deranged thing I hear in AA meetings sometimes is, or about alcoholism, is that alcoholics are above average intelligence. I have only heard this at AA meetings, I will tell you that. I have yet to hear it at an Al-Anon meeting. That's for absolutely sure. And the topic of the Al-Anon meeting today will be those brilliant drunks. And in addition to our family recovery, our boys really started really blossoming, really just becoming less frightened, really enjoying the support and love of what was happening in our home spiritually. I told you how scared Micah was, and really in sobriety, I was making the boys lunch, and I said, Micah, what do you want on your hot dog? And he said, I want mustard, onions, and lettuce. I said, lettuce? He said, yeah, I don't want lettuce. And he walked away, and he came back about 45 minutes later, and he looked at me directly in the eyes, and I'm not altering one syllable. He said to me, I will never again allow your opinion of what I want affect what I ask for. So I asked him to sponsor me at that point. A couple of years after that, Jesse broke his wrist in a growth plane, which, if you know the way kids develop, it's the cartilage that's going to turn to bone. He had done it in a schoolyard accident, and he had it set. And when something like that gets set, it can't be disturbed because it's going to turn to bone. It's very important that it be undisturbed. So I bring him home, and the boys are beating the crap out of each other in 2 minutes. They're brothers, you know, so they're rolling around. And I had to let Micah know that it wasn't okay, that we had to set a limit and it had to be held. And I got right up in his face, and I yelled at him. I said, you can't mess with your brother now. You got to leave him alone. And he walked away from me, and he went into his room, and he slammed the door. Slammed the door. So now I got the dad tick going, you know. I do it. Slam the door. So I go to the door and I open the door, and before I can unload on him, he says, hold it a second. I didn't tell you were wrong out there. You were right. But a big guy just got in my face and screamed and yelled. I didn't say you were wrong. Don't tell me I can't be mad. What's that? What the hell is that? That's standing up for yourself and telling somebody how you feel without telling them what to do. That's what he's been watching his mom and I try to do with varying degrees of success and failure these years. To really tell somebody how I feel without playing God with them. This for me has been the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. And those are the people I've always gravitated to. If you're new here, you can find any kind of AA you want here. I myself have always steered absolutely clear of the tough love deal. You're a moron, shut up, sit down. Just like home for me. I don't, you can't do me like I do me anyway. You need a full-time staff to do me like I do me. I've been lucky enough to be around people who have applied the scalpel of honesty with the anesthetic of love. And that's what I've always needed. And I know different people need different stuff. I've been asked to tell my story, so what the hell, I'm going to go and do it. And that's what's been really, really valuable for me. And that's the kind of people I have continued to seek. And it's like when people ask me to sponsor them, I say, I'll sponsor you. And I'll be as involved in your life as you want me to be and as uninvolved in your life as you want me to be. The best time I ever got fired by a sponsor, this was so great. This guy walked up to me at a meeting, and he said to me, look, you just haven't been there for me. I got to move on, thanks, but I got to move on. I had no recollection of ever having sponsored the guy. I had no recollection of him asking me I had no memory of the actual sponsorship itself. And this was a guy that when he shared, people really did take their own life. I mean, he just was this blowhard. I judge no man, but the guy was impossible. So I experienced this tremendous jubilation and relief of having missed the whole thing, except the best part about it, of getting fired, you know? This friend of mine actually has, this is the best sponsor story I've ever heard. A friend of mine was approached by a guy at a meeting, and the guy said to him, "You look really familiar to me." And my friend said, "That's because I'm your sponsor." And what had happened was, my friend's a speaker at AA, and he'd been talking in a meeting, and this guy was there with a recovery home, and the guy walked up to him after the meeting and asked him to be a sponsor, and never called him again. But my buddy remembered the guy, so we got to say, I thought that was great. And our kids were teenagers, and I came home one night from talking at an AA meeting. I think I had saved everybody in Covina that particular night. And our son started having some real problems with drugs, and it was just so funny coming home from having, stamped out alcoholism, and it was pretty crazy in my house that night. And, my wife, maybe you'll hear her story tomorrow, but, she knew exactly what to do, and I knew exactly what to do. I called my sponsor. My sponsor got some medication from an AA psychiatrist, and I didn't go down to the hospital to help his brother out when he was born, and that night, Alcoholics Anonymous was all over us. You guys didn't tell me our kids weren't going to have difficulties. You told me I'd never have to be alone again. God doesn't love us more if our kids are in trouble or not. I mean, not my God. I was in my first year of sobriety, and I started sponsoring a guy named Roland, and Roland used to call me every night, and he'd leave a message on my machine every night, and he'd say, "Scott, it's Roland, I'm sober, I love you, good night." He'd hang the phone up. 5 years later, when I was 6 years sober, my son Micah came to me, and he said, "You know what, Dad, when I was a little boy, I couldn't fall asleep until I heard Roland's voice on the machine. And once I heard Roland's voice on the machine, I knew it was safe, and it was okay to go to bed." So Alcoholics Anonymous has been coming into our house and tucking our kids in. This is the little boy I told there was no God to. I tried to rip God out of his life. And you guys came over, and Lily and Micah have a very powerful relationship 14 years later. They just adore each other. At the end of my first year of sobriety, I had a ghostwriting job for 20th Century Fox, and I was being considered to direct a situation comedy. And I thought that if I had gotten this particular job, I was sort of becoming a spiritual Goliath at that particular time. I was sponsoring a lot of guys, and I thought if I had gotten this particular job, it really, really would have benefited the men that I sponsor, because they would see me prosper in this way. I think it would have been really very good for them. I didn't get the job, and I almost drank. And I was humiliated, and I had to sit down and write a 10-step. I had to write a resentment against myself for almost drinking. I had to write a resentment against the company for not giving me the job. And my sponsor said to me, "Well, I guess you have the show business God." I said, "What?" He said, "Well, what keeps you sober?" I said, "God." He said, "So God keeps you sober. You didn't get a show business job, so I guess you had the show business God, and he has abandoned you utterly." Now, when I came to LA, I heard God getting people into relationships, God getting people jobs, God getting people parking spaces. Oh, no, not the parking space God. Not the parking space God. What if you don't get a space? And if you have a parking space God and he gives you a space, pass it on. Silly idea. And I realized when I did 6 and 7 on these resentments about not getting this job, I really had to have a talk with God I hadn't had before. I had to have a God big enough so that a lot of stuff could happen in his universe and I didn't get to drink. And, we got whacked in the Northridge earthquake. We just got creamed. We were right in the middle of it, right in the epicenter. My wife claims that I left a footprint on her forehead getting out of bed. I think she's lying. And shortly after the quake, we were at an AA function out of town, and a woman at this function said to me, oh, I'm so glad God got us out of L.A. Before the quake. So I said, so he likes you, but we're crap, but he likes you. And she said to me, I guess he just felt you had some lessons to learn. I'm out of here. I'm just telling you, I'm out of here. If I got a guy up there saying, get him, get the Redmond boy, get him, no evacuation plan for you, Jew boy, get him. I'm out of here. I want to have nothing to do with that world. Max and Paul, they had a terrible fire in Laguna, and our friend John was at a meeting where a woman was sharing and saying, thank you, God, for saving my house. Everyone is covered in soot, you know. Everybody's living in an ashtray. Anyway, and I realized I had to get a God big enough so a lot of stuff could happen in his world, and I didn't get to drink. So when I did 6 and 7 that day, humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. Humbly isn't, take him if you can, big guy. Humbly isn't, take him, you miserable. Humbly is, Pop, I can't bear this. Can you help me? Because I cannot bear this for one more minute. Please do my work. I'll do your work. I want to have a relationship with you. When we drew closer to him, he revealed himself to us. And I said, I will do anything for a living. I will do anything. I'm willing. Just keep me sober. And 3 months later, I was working as a cook on a catering truck. And I looked up to God, and I said, I did not mean this.
Absolutely. We have had a grotesque misunderstanding. I did not.
This was not on the I'll do anything list. And it was a great job. When they make a TV show or a movie in L.A., they hire a caterer. You follow the company around and make them food. It's Teamster dough. You're on a vehicle on a movie set. That's a great job. But I'm Scott Redmond. The first movie that I catered, the star and executive producer of the movie was a guy who I had worked with in show business. And he stuck his head on the kitchen truck that morning and he said, can I have a burrito?
Scott? And I said, what's happening, babe? And he said, is this your truck? I said, no, but it's my spatula.
I got home and I called my sponsor and I said, yeah, we're getting the gift now.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Very, very beautiful gift that we're getting. And man, I had to start working my ass off. I had to start working that 10-step. I had to start writing down those resentments against myself, against show business, against the world, against the people who were seeing me cook. I wound up 7 people who had been my assistant directors and stage managers. I wound up, and you know what? The lowest guys on a totem pole would go, get pissed off and go get the caterer. I mean, it was just like these third assistant directors, and I would think, someday you're going to come in and meet your new boss, and it's going to be me, and I'm going to turn every living, breathing, functioning moment of your life into a living hell. And you can't get through a day that way, so I have to write those 10 steps, and you know what? I got free. And I was able to help some guys who had thought they had fallen from a height when they came to AA. They had not gotten the top rank, which I believe is child of God. I had a friend named Paul who used to say this prayer. He'd say, Father, I'm willing to do anything as long as you keep me sober, but please don't let it be as bad as what you did to Scott. And I got right with it. And after about 3 years of cooking, I got a overture made to me from a company called Ketchum Public Relations for this big-time comedy writing job. And you know what? At this point, I felt that if I got the job now, it really would benefit the guys I sponsor at this point, because they would have seen me suffer and now prosper thusly. So my brain blew up, and I had to do a videotape for these guys. I crashed and burned before I even found out about the job. I lost my mind. I had to sit down and write the 10-step because I am a mind reader. I know what is going to happen. So I had to surrender, and I prayed about it, and I wrote about it, and I was okay with it. And a little while after that, I got a call from Ketchum telling me I did not get the job. And then right after that, I got a call from my catering company telling me that I had, if I asked them if I could cater some commercials in the mountains above L.A. I got in the truck and I got up there and I grabbed the call sheet, which gives you all the information about the job, and I saw that the commercials were for Ketchum Public Relations. I'm feeding him now. Now I'm feeding him. And I looked down at the end of the truck, and there's a guy videotaping me. I said, what are you doing? He's videotaping the making of the commercial. He's videotaping my humiliation. He's taping me. He's going to go back to New York and show the guys in New York the tape, and they're going to say, is that Scott Redmond with the meatloaf there? Oh, that poor son of a bitch. I get off of work, and I call my sponsor, and I said, yeah, we're really getting the gift now. It's a miracle. Miracle, miracle, miracle. He said, I guess God had enough writers today and he needed a few cooks. Then he said, you told God that you wanted to work for Ketchum and you forgot to tell him what you wanted to do. Oh, man. As I've gone through sobriety, I've had nagging problems that have come up for me and difficulties that my wife and I had together, difficulties with an eating disorder that I have, difficulties in the work area, making money when our kid was having a particularly rough time. And I have found that if I take a look at step 10, if I do inventory, and I stop using that inventory as a tool to remind me of what's wrong rather than as a tool to change, remarkable things have come to pass for me. And I know it has for countless others because I've watched them. And it was really funny. When I was doing this retreat a couple of weeks ago, my biggest problem, which I shared at great length about, was difficulties I was having with employment, which are all resolved now. And right before I come up there, I was doing this. I read this 10-step to my sponsor, and I was trying to talk myself into telling one guy off in AA who had particularly offended me, and I was having these difficulties with work. And my sponsor said to me, I tell you what, don't tell him off until you get a job. So I get this job. I've had this job for a couple of weeks now. I get the job, and I get the job. I'm sitting in the office, and I'm going, who was I going to tell off? Who? I'm like, I couldn't remember the guy, it pissed me off. Because now I was allowed to tell him off, Our son Micah, after he graduated high school, went down and worked with the Zapatista revolutionaries in Chiapas, Mexico for a while, because I wasn't terrified enough. And what a remarkable thing. I mean, during the 60s, I talked a lot of long crap and never got out of the house. He was just doing it. He just went and he did it, And the Mexican military is depicted as such a kind, loving group of people that Nancy and I would just, it would really be hard sometimes. And I would take a walk in the morning and I would say the third step. I would do my steps in the morning. And one of the things I would do is I'd just turn to Mexican military because I get these images in my head, just like bad Oliver Stone time, And I couldn't shake them sometimes. And I'd just say, Pop, you got it. Take the Mexican military. There's no way I'll be able to manage the Mexican military today. I don't think. And one morning I just couldn't do it. I just got beat to the ground. I just was over. I couldn't stop being scared. And I called my sponsor and I told him what was going on. And he said to me, this might be the most incredible thing he ever does. And I said to myself, kiss, but, it's easy for you to say it's not your kid. I thought all this. And the fact is it's the most incredible thing he's ever done. The next year, Nancy was checking him into school in Olympia, and all the moms are there checking the kids in, driving them nuts, And our kid didn't care. He's been at Chiapas. Make my bed. Who gives a crap, I mean, every time we wonder, we say, well, can he do that? One of us will go, he's been at Chiapas. What the hell? He's not going to find the store? I think he's got this wired pretty good. If you knew, I want to welcome you to AA, and I want to tell you that I think you're in a very dangerous situation. The good news is our problem mainly rests in our mind, and the bad news is our problem mainly rests in our mind. I heard my sponsor say the first time I ever heard him talk when I was just a couple of months sober, that this is the only recovery he knew from a fatal illness that actually left the sufferer in better condition than they were in before they caught the disease. What a remarkably accurate and adept thing to say. It's the only book that I know of that is about recovery from a fatal illness that contains the sentence, we absolutely insist on enjoying life. Our son Micah gave you guys a beautiful compliment, which I want to share with you now. A year ago or so ago, he was babysitting for this couple on the program. And the guy said to him, what do you think of hearing your dad talking AA? And Micah said, I don't really much give a crap about it. I don't know anything about it, and that's not my deal. He said, and Micah said to the guy, all I can tell you is that since I'm a very, very little boy, the men and women of Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon have taken very good care of me, and never once has any of them demanded that I believe what they believe. What an incredibly beautiful thing to say about us. And that's not an intellectual thing with him. That's based on 13 and a half years of practical experience as a member of an AA Al-Anon family. The Road and Happy Destiny, the entire chapter of Vision for You, not the entire, but a good portion of it, is dedicated to something, I don't know any other spiritual pursuit that says, you don't need to know us. We can't do it for you. It is not necessary that you contact anybody who has been involved in the writing of this book. All that is necessary is that you do a few simple things to clean this thing, to clean the lens so it can reflect some of God's light. And I'm sure we'll run into some of you somewhere at some time. You know, it'll be at your meeting that we'll run into you. Most of the spiritual propriety and bullying and blackmailing that goes on around this, although I judge no man again, is if you want this thing, you better be with me. You better, because this is the only way you're going to get it in a way where you ain't going to be in the hot plate. At any rate, because our problem mainly rests in our mind, we're privy to an incredible amount of beauty and love and fellowship and sisterhood that people who are suffering from other diseases don't get to be involved in. Not like this. There's no book about cholera that says, cholera's a hoot, you'll love cholera. We'll meet other people with cholera. It's fabulous. When you'll meet people who just caught cholera, it doesn't get any better than that. The problem was our problem mainly rests in our mind. Now, if you're new here, you're going to hear a lot of people telling you to put Alcoholics Anonymous first. The reason why they're telling you that is because once you trivialize this disease, because the strange mental twist, the reasons for drinking, prevail themselves upon you in a way that keeps you in the cycle of spree and remorse. And we're presenting you with some spiritual tools, not spiritual weapons, spiritual tools that can actually move you from the cycle of spree and remorse into the cycle of surrender and commitment. The spiritual tools, not spiritual weapons, spiritual tools. That's all we're doing here. And a couple of years ago, I met a guy at a meeting. I went home, he called me. He talked to me for an hour. I said, 4 times so he would know that I was not dead. He explained to me in that hour that he had been stalking several women. He had a restraining order taken out against him, but it's okay now. He's 2 weeks sober, and it's all different. At the end of the hour, he said to me, I feel so alone. I said, I hardly know you, and I just listened to you for an hour without interrupting you. What do you mean you feel alone? He said, I mean I don't have old women. I said, what would you be bringing to a relationship right now besides stalking skills? What exactly are you bringing to the party right now? People 2 weeks into remission from leukemia are having dating problems. Alcoholics are, because our problem mainly rests in our mind. Because we're able to trivialize it like that. Some years ago, I was talking to a new guy on the phone. My wife is walking through our bedroom, and she just hears me say on the phone, let's say the aliens are coming. She stopped short. She ain't missing a moment of this. I said to the guy, look, that's an outside interest. I'm not telling you the aliens aren't coming, okay? I have no opinion on that. But I do have one question. Why you? Why have they come for you? Why have they traversed an entire universe for your sorry ass? You're 11 days sober, you have no life. Why you? Plus, he's sleeping with a Bible on his chest to ward them off. They're going to traverse the galaxy, walk into his room and say, oh no, the Bible, let's go home. I told that story some years ago in my home group, and the guy who I was telling it about walked into the room while I was telling the story. So I'm watching the guy, and I'm watching him. As I'm telling the story, he went like this. And I saw it happen to him, that horrible moment. I again want to thank this wonderful group of people in this wonderful jamboree for giving my wife and I we called our son, told him to come up here, and then waited in the parking lot for him. We haven't seen him in months. Just such a great gift for us to be here with our friends and to make new friends. If you're new here, I want to urge you as much as I possibly can to not trivialize this. What I want to urge you to do as much as I can is to take this thing as seriously as you possibly can and then go out there and have the time of your life. Thanks so much for having us.